everyone. We are here from this afternoon. I'm in Alexandria, Virginia, kind of coming to you from my bedroom. And it's our third of 3 conversations for our Sports for a Purpose programming. Really, really excited about today's topic, physical and mental health in sports. And there's so much wrapped up in this conversation. I'm really excited to be joined by my panelists this afternoon. We have Isabel Hernandez, who is our teen advisor, hailing from Puerto Rico originally, now living in Florida. Super excited to hear from you today, Isabel. We're also here with Alexa Bliss, who is a WWE superstar and pretty much just a badass athlete. So I'm really excited to hear from you today too, Alexa. We also have Chris Mosier, who is an elite athlete, an activist. I'm sure many of you know him, know his story, and really excited for your perspective today, Chris. So thanks so much for joining us. And then also really excited to have Jessamine Stanley. Jessamine, I'm a huge fan of you personally. I've seen your beautiful photography, your beautiful yoga. I've been following you and I've been a fan. So I'm so happy to hear from you today and really honored to have all of you join our conversation. So let's go ahead and jump into this. For those of you who are tuning in, I am the executive director of Girl Up. And if you don't know, Girl Up is a global leadership development initiative, really training the next generation of leaders who are going to help us achieve gender equality. And we care about gender equality wherever it shows up for girls and for women. So if there's a place where girls and women aren't equal, we care about it, whether that's geographically or in different industries. And we know that in sports, there are inequalities, whether that's media representation, pay equity, the sports business and entertainment industry. We know how important sports is for girls and for leadership and for confidence and for self-esteem, and really just any place where girls and boys both have the same interests and abilities. We want to see equal opportunities. And so we launched Sports for a Purpose last year, and this panel series has been a way that we can bring that conversation to our community, bringing in experts and different perspectives, really just to have a conversation to kind of open up how some of these inequalities play out. So I want to get started, and I'm going to come to you first, Isabel. As our Girl Up resident expert, young person on this conversation, can you just share a little bit about your experience with Girl Up and what it's meant to you?
Yeah, I joined Girl Up in junior year, because in sophomore year I was struggling with mental health just because I felt like I didn't know what was my purpose in life. And with the help of like my mom and the school, I was able to find tools and resources to help with my mental health. And junior year came around, and my teacher, Mrs. Kendall Duran, an angel, she invited me to a Girl Up Club, and I found a community there that was so supportive. I just had to do more.
Well, we are very lucky that you found us, and definitely have loved having you on our teen advisory board this year. I want to just kind of throw a question out to all of you, actually, and maybe Alexa, if you want to kick us off, but thinking back to, maybe you were Isabel's age, you were in high school, or probably well before that, what first initially drew you to sports, and how did that affect your trajectory?
Oh man, I was interested in sports the first time I watched the Olympics when I was 4 years old. I was watching the Olympics on TV, and my mom claims that I was standing there with my hands on my hips saying, "That looks easy. That looks easy. I can do that." And then I started trying to do flips around the house. So when I was 4, my parents got me into gymnastics, and that's when I started in athletics and grew up in sports my entire life. I did gymnastics, kickboxing, softball, all-star cheer, bodybuilding, track field, and that's kind of led me to the career I have today with WWE. And I think if my parents didn't let me get into sports at such a young age, that I wouldn't have developed that passion and work ethic, and I wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah, definitely. Chris?
Yeah, so I also was 4 years old when I remember my earliest memories of being an athlete and being in sport. I am a transgender man. I was assigned female at birth. So I grew up playing girls and women's sports as a young person. And while I didn't feel like I fit in elsewhere, I most felt like myself and like I fit in with my peers when I was playing sports. And so people, valued me and appreciated me because I was a great athlete, because I was a great teammate and a good leader. And that's really where I found my greatest sense of self, was through being an athlete and playing sports. So, I was really drawn to that. And it was something that was very consistent for me from the age of 4, of being in t-ball and then baseball and then softball, all the way through high school as a 3-sport all-conference athlete in volleyball, basketball, and softball. And then I took time off in college because I didn't want to be on a women's team, didn't have an understanding of myself really in the term of transgender, but just realized that my gender identity didn't match the way that people were seeing me in the world. And I found that about myself through sports. And then I came back to myself in sports after school, after college, of wanting to reconnect with that feeling that I had as a young person, of feeling like I belonged, of feeling like my body was my home, and feeling most like myself. And that was always through sports.
Yeah. And Jessamine, I know yoga isn't really like a competitive sport, but it's incredibly athletic. And I know that you are an athlete. Did you have sports in your background, or was yoga really where you found your physical output?
So I've always really loved being active, but I'm not particularly coordinated and or fast. And so like my earliest memories of sport are definitely like the presidential fitness challenge in elementary school, and feeling like I was the slowest one to finish the mile, and feeling like very disempowered by that experience. And it made me feel like, oh my God, I'm not good enough for this. And so I was always like on the outskirts of sports as a young person. Like I was softball manager. I was obsessed with dance because it felt accessible to me, but I never felt like, and this was very disappointing for, I think, my father, especially because he was like baseball star, football star, and I just never felt the confidence that I think you really have to get, like everyone else has said, like I think experiencing that confidence from a young age is really helpful, and I definitely didn't have that. But when I was in graduate school, I was going through a period of depression that, I mean, I'm prone to depression and anxiety, so it wasn't the first time, what hasn't been the last time, but I was going through some stuff, and one of my friends was like, oh my God, you should try yoga, it'll change your life. And I had actually tried yoga once when I was in high school, and I was just like, that's not for me, I'm not into it. But she got me caught up on a Groupon. I was like, what's the worst that could happen? I'll go one time, and maybe I don't go again. But it totally changed my outlook on being physical in general. And it wasn't like I went and I was all of a sudden like super flexible and all the postures came easily. Like even just sitting on my shins felt like a struggle for me in the beginning, but it really gave me an opportunity. The solitude that yoga asks of us really gave me an opportunity to look within myself and find the stillness that I wasn't finding in the outside world. And it became like a soothing balm for my mental health. And I think that like, had I not made that connection then, I really don't know where I would be now. And that has opened the door for me to feel really comfortable in lots of different athletic spaces, and feel like it's okay to not be the fastest one and not be the most coordinated and not necessarily be the best, but always be doing my best and really showing up for myself in that way.
Yeah, thank you, Jessamine. I can appreciate that. I believe I was the slowest one in my challenge. I didn't really find running until I was almost 30, and I am a jogger at best, but even when you find it kind of later on, you can definitely find the benefits of it. You talked a little bit about kind of your insecurities, and I wonder, just Alexa, Isabel, Chris, whoever wants to jump in, how did your insecurities when you were young, and then sort of finding your sports and your athleticism or your physical outlet, how does that help you when you're in those moments of questioning yourself? Alexa, do you want to take that?
Sure. I was like, I didn't want to, if someone wanted to jump in, I didn't want to, okay. So growing up, I had dealt with a lot of eating disorders in high school and in college, and growing up in gymnastics and all-star cheer, there's always that pressure to look a certain way and to perform a certain way. And I wanted to be the flyer that was in the air and all that stuff, which I never was. I was the main base because I was strong. But for me, after having, my stuff with depression and eating disorders, I actually turned to bodybuilding, and that's what allowed me to gain weight in a healthy way and to learn a healthier lifestyle of, balancing food with working out and taking that step by step in those athletics. That definitely helped me be able to be comfortable with food, comfortable with my anxiety from having eating disorders, and actually helped with my depression and getting over those eating disorders. I would say 100% attributed to one, therapy, and two, the sport of bodybuilding, because I was more comfortable with myself. I was more comfortable with how I would feel about myself, think about myself, and I could control, my workouts and my healthy eating plan. And I was actually able to introduce foods that were fear foods because of bodybuilding back into my life. And now I think it's great because now I just eat whatever and it's great. But that's definitely because of athletics for sure.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Chris, I'm sure, the insecurities of this sort of identity experience as you were going through sports, but can you share a little bit about that experience with finding the confidence through all of that?
Yeah, I think as a young person, I definitely found my confidence in being a good athlete and being praised for my athletic performance. And if not for my athletic performance, then certainly for my effort and my sort of intensity. I think at that time, I had no understanding about trans identity. I didn't know the word transgender. I didn't know it was a possibility for me to identify in that way. So I always just sort of felt like myself. And it was very clear to me that I didn't fit in with the other girls on my team, but I also wasn't like my brothers. And so, I sort of just felt like I had confidence in myself and as an independent person from a very young age until about high school, when girls are supposed to stop being tomboys and there are more expectations about gender roles and gender performance that are put on young girls. And when I didn't conform to that, that's when I started to get the messages that there was something wrong with me, or that how I was existing in the world wasn't right. And I think that really shook my confidence. And so that's why sport played such an important role in my life at that time, because it really gave me an outlet to feel, that the most like myself, like I did before all of those voices kind of came into my head. As an adult, coming back into sport, back into running, was the way that I found out that I was trans, that I sort of had this moment on the starting line with other women of being like, what am I doing here? Like, this isn't where I belong. And sort of understanding that when I won my first race, that I was too embarrassed to tell people that I won my race because I won in the women's category. And I need to say, right, like there's obviously nothing wrong with being a woman, and I am a stronger advocate for women in sport now than I ever was before. I'm a stronger feminist now because I understand, my sort of feelings about not identifying as a woman, and sort of the way that people treated me differently as a young female athlete than they treat me today as a male athlete. Yeah. And it's, something that has really been highlighted in my experience in transition in terms of confidence and how sport and how people interact with me in sport plays into my levels of confidence.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, Chris. It's such a unique perspective on the equality piece and the treatment. Isabel, I'm just curious if you could share, how does some of this conversation resonate with you? Obviously, you're in high school right now. I know you told us before we went live that you run every day. How does how does this all resonate with you as a young person kind of navigating all of this?
Well, listening from you guys' story, it touched me because I'm living it at this moment, because I am the youth at this moment. And when I was struggling with my mental health and I didn't know what to do with it, it was mostly because everybody was telling me oh, you're gonna be successful because I am really smart and I'm really athletic. And so everybody's always telling me, oh, you're gonna be a lawyer or a doctor. And then they have like these expectations of like what type of colleges you have to go and stuff like that. And sports actually gave me was one of my first steps of becoming a good leader because it helped me to work as a team and stuff like that. And so being a leader and then having my own opinions about like gender equality and stuff like that, and coming from a community where they were always telling the youth, oh, it's not your time to make change right now. You do that once you have like a college degree and stuff like that. And that kind of led me to struggle with my mental health. And I found out that I was in sports because everybody was telling me I was good at it and not really enjoying it. And so once I figured that out, I use sports more as in like an outlet and not more of as trying to do what everybody else is telling me to do basically. And so now I run because I enjoy running and not because everybody expects me to win at running and stuff like that. So
Yes.
Jessamine, I feel like you want to jump in there. Go.
Yes, I did. I really resonate with that as a sentiment because I think that one of the best parts for me now about engaging with physical activity is that I just do it because it feels good, not because there's any like expectation of an outcome or a goal or anything like that. And I think that like even when there are like expectations and goals, it's nice to just have like that little bit of it that's just for you. And I think of it as like when I was a little kid, and I feel like everybody has this little kid inside of them who like, there was a time where you would just like turn cartwheels up the street for no reason. Like you just do it, you'd like run. I used to ask my dad just to time me running up the street just cause like, I don't even, and like you race people just because. And I think that like that feeling as you get older, it goes away because we think that like we have to fit ourselves into these boxes and that there come all these expectations that are coming from other people but are actually expectations that they have for themselves that they're then projecting onto us. It's just this whole like really intense cycle, and it's so lovely whenever the activity is just for the love of it, just for the thrill of it, just for the sport. So I feel that I really resonated.
Jessamine, I want to stay with you for just a second because Alexa talked about this, and I think it's really important for our audience that sort of what comes with enjoying being physically active and insecurity is obviously this conversation around body positivity and feeling comfortable in your own skin. Chris, obviously, you know, you've touched on this. Alexa, you talked about, you know, some of your experiences being young and trying to fit that physical ideal to be the flyer and in gymnastics. And Jessamine, I know this is a huge issue that you spend so much of your time focusing on. So what would be some advice, and I'd love to actually come to a few of you on this, to our audience watching, on how we can be thinking about body positivity, and what would be your message for our audience?
Totally. I think that a lot of people get put off of body positivity because of the idea that you have to be positive all the time. You have to be happy with your body every single day. And I think that that's probably my biggest advice when engaging with a body love, or really what I think of as a body liberation journey, is that you're not going to feel good every day, and you're not expected to feel good every day. There are going to be days where you don't feel good about yourself, and that there's a lot to learn about yourself on those days. And honestly, I think those days are more helpful in the long run than the days where you just feel great and you're like, this is all amazing and I'm doing such a great job. But I think accepting the ups and downs as a part of the journey and a part of the process is really, really helpful. And I also think it's helpful to remember that, and I talked about this a little bit before, but I get so caught up in like what other people are thinking. And I know I'm not alone in that. I think a lot of body negativity, a lot of unhappiness comes from being overly concerned with what other people think. And that's like the only advice that I really have in the end is like, as much as you can, just try to stop thinking about what other people think. And like, I know that it seems impossible and seems completely ridiculous to even like, you're like, how am I supposed to stop thinking about this? But it's like, other people are not actually going to have any impact on who you are as a human being. And ultimately, like, every answer that you're looking for is inside of you. And I always think of it as like, how do I look versus how do I feel?
Mhm.
That if I can answer the question, how do I feel, and weigh with much more importance than how do I look, because how do I look has a lot to do with other people. It's like, how do I appear to other people? But if the question is like, how do I feel great, I feel confident, I feel powerful, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. That's how I've rooted my own body liberation journey. And I mean, it's like a day by day thing. Every day is different, but you step into it for the journey, and that's just good enough ultimately.
Yeah. Thank you. Alexa, do you want to add anything to that? I remember when we were together, maybe a year and a half ago now, this was a big topic of conversation, and how you have kind of grown through that, and just any advice you have for the audience.
First off, what Jasmine said was amazing. It's all true. It's 100%. That is incredible. My whole thing was how I needed to learn to not let other people determine my self-worth. Especially, growing up in competitive sports, we were judged by other people competing, and certain people, the judges would figure out where we placed. And, with what I do now with WWE, we kind of open ourselves up to social media and to be criticized, and to, we go out there in spandex, which is not flattering on anyone. And we go and, wrestle each other under these bright lights that are very unflattering as well. And, we just have to open ourselves up to accept that not everyone's going to like what we look like, and not everyone's going to like, I always say I'm not for everyone. But I've had to learn to not let someone else determine my self-worth, because as long as I am happy with the person I am and I feel good, like Jasmine was saying, as long as you feel good, that's all that really matters.
Yes.
Jessamine and Alexa straight up have me like a bobblehead doll right now. I'm just like, yes. It's so true. In my transition, I delayed my transition after knowing who I was. I delayed my transition for over a year and a half because I was worried about what other people would think. I was worried if I'd have a place in sport, worried if I'd be able to continue to do the things that I love. And ultimately, I was afraid of what my coworkers, what my parents, what my family, what my partner, what people around me, my family and friends would think about me being who I truly am. And so, if in terms of sport, I think like if you have a body, you are an athlete. And I really believe that that we can all be athletes, and that we don't have to compare ourselves to other people. It's about being a better version of ourselves. And so every day I'm trying to get a little bit better, and I'm trying to, on my off days, do mobility so that I can, be a little more bendy, and then, doing strength work so I can be a little bit stronger, or if I'm doing my running or my biking so I can be a little faster. But if I'm not doing that, then I'm reading something about my sport or about my identity or about me as a person to give me a mental edge to try to make me a better version of me. And I'm not doing that for anybody else. I'm doing that so that I can be the best me, so that I can show up in the world as the person that I know that I am, and so that I ultimately can serve other people. And I can only do that by being the best version of me and being cool with myself. So my, my acceptance has to start with me, and I don't have to worry about what I can only control what I think of me. I can't control what other people think of me. And I think coming to that understanding as an adult was something that I wish I had that when I was younger, because it would have been a much more positive experience in my youth. I think if I put less energy and effort into what other people were thinking about me and just focused on being cool with myself.
I feel like that is like one of the most universal lessons that like we all look back. If you could go back and find that version, that age, right, where you feel the most insecure. And I know what it is for me. And it's like, go back and find that age version of Melissa and tell her none of it matters. All that matters is how you feel. And like we can tell you this, Isabel, we can tell the audience this, and you almost have to like live it, right? And so I also think, you know, giving yourself a little bit of slack if you're in that place right now, like we've all been there. And I know, you know, amongst at least the four of us, we got to the other side of it, and we are all very confident in who we are now, you know, physically, mentally, and all of the above. So if you're in that moment, like just keep going, I think too, because you can hear it, but you also have to live it. In my experience.
Oh my gosh. Can I add something to that? Because I just think that is that's exactly spot on. I feel like I'm frequently asked, like, if you could go back in time and ask your younger self, like, one thing, what would you say? And I'm like, I mean, I'm also not really in favor of time travel like that, to be honest, because I'm always worried that, like, what if I messed something up if I went back in time? But if I'm Marty McFly and I could go back in time, I wouldn't say anything to that girl, because, like, I was bullied really badly in middle school. It was something that, like, at the time, I never thought that I would feel the way about it that I do now. But I am so grateful for that experience. Like, I learned so much about other people. I learned a lot about myself, and I could never have done that work had it not happened. And I think that, like, when you're in the eye of the storm, it feels like you're all by yourself, and like nobody gets it. And like, it could never get better, but it's always going to get better. The sun always comes out. The rain is how the flowers grow. And if that doesn't happen, then you can't be the robust, brilliant person that you're meant to be. Like, the scars are there on purpose. It's so hard to remember that at the time. So I feel you. That resonated for me really deeply.
Thank you, Jasmine. Yeah. And Isabel, I want to come back to you since we're all sort of talking to you and the audience. You know, I think the other piece of physical and mental is the sort of toll that all of this takes on us, right? Like the burnout, you talked about anxiety and some of the things that you've experienced, you know, in your life right now. What are some ways that you use to cope with burnout, or that you've found that have helped you? I know you mentioned running being one of those, but can you share from your perspective of being in this right now, of how you're kind of tackling this?
For me, every time I experience like burnout physically or mentally, I try to surround myself with positive vibes. So if I don't want to be by myself, I usually go to like my mom and my sister, and we just have like a girls' day. We like relax, we do facial masks and watch movies, comedies and stuff like that. But on a daily basis, I listen to music. Has anybody seen like Grey's Anatomy?
Yeah.
When they're like those stressful moments where they just dance it out. That's me in my room by myself. So that's what I try to do.
That's great.
Like dance it out and just like trying to feel relaxed. And sometimes when that doesn't help, I usually go to my mom, who was there when who helped me out the first time, and I try to talk to her, try to figure out what's the root to my problem, and then try to solve it from there. And you'll feel a lot better just talking to somebody. You don't have to, some people, for me, my mom struggles with it, but she takes medication for help. I didn't want to go that route, so I just used more of like therapy wise. And so when I don't have like a therapist there, I have my mom. And because she's also went through it and she understands how I want to handle things, that she's an open book. She tells me what she went through, and it makes me realize that, okay, I'm not the only one feeling like this, and it doesn't make me feel alone. And sometimes that helps a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Isabel. I think, you know, just getting it out and dancing it out, right? I think so many people can relate to that. I've been doing that a lot in the last couple of weeks. Whenever my daughter she's 3 and she gets like just really where you're like, let's turn on the music, let's have a little dance party, and it really helps, just that physical release. And I know sports and athletics is a big part of that. I have a question for the group, and Alexa, I'm thinking maybe you might be able to kick us off with this. Really part of getting through all of this is being mentally strong, right? And how you build that muscle of your own ways of coping. And Alexa, you've been a bodybuilder, you are a professional wrestler, like you are the definition of strong. And how does mentally strong come into play with being physically strong, and how do those two things come together for you?
Oh man, I honestly feel that it is a lot there. Trying to figure out how I should word this. I feel like it's easy to lift up a weight. It's easy to jog outside, but it is easy to get a scratch and heal it. But it is so much harder to heal mental scars and to build that mental muscle to, get to a healthy mental state. And I think honestly, it's about finding your healthy ways of coping and finding your healthy ways of, decompressing and de-stressing. And I've been working a lot with that recently. And for me recently, it's been music, and I listen to different music while we're traveling, because it's hard being on the road almost 300 days a year, and you don't see your family, you don't see your friends, and you're in work all the time, and your body hurts and you're mentally drained, but you have to stay mentally, level and sane. And for me, that's music or watching a show that I really like. Or recently I've been doing a nostalgic wall back here of like the stuff that made me happy, like back in the day. I got my Lisa Frank folder, I got my 8
I love that.
You know what I mean? Like, this is my little happy place. And I don't know if y'all can see it, but I don't know if we're allowed to show this stuff, but whatever, we're live. I recently redid my office because I was sitting in my house and I was like, there's nothing in my house that is like makes me mentally super happy. So I redid like my whole office, and it's got Mickey ears everywhere, and just like
Yes.
And I feel like you just have to find something that makes you happy and go with it. And this room was completely empty like 4 days ago, and then I just completely did all this because like, it's gonna make me happy, and you have to find like your way of like coping. And for me, it's like finding the things that I liked and the nostalgic feel, and kind of, I don't know, level yourself and bring you back to your happy place. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I muted myself. Chris, can you add to that too, about just sort of the mental and the physical and how that comes together to be strong?
Yeah, I think for me, the mental part has always been harder than the physical part because, as Alexa said, it's not easy to be an athlete by any means, but it is easier than maybe facing down some of the voices that I had in my own head and that other people were saying to me, particularly about my identity and about where I belong in sports. For me, it's been really important to have a gratitude practice. And so like, I agree when Jessamine was talking about body positivity and how the word positivity is so loaded. I wouldn't have ever called myself a positive person, but more and more as an adult, I've noticed that mindset is everything. And, we have to be careful about how we talk to ourselves because we are always listening. And I think that's so important.
Yes.
Be careful of how you talk to yourself because you are always listening. And so, by saying those positive things, by having a mantra, by having, just like these little moments where we correct the negative thoughts that creep in, acknowledge, okay, so I'm thinking negatively. I face this in races a lot, that we are always more attentive to the negative things in the world than we are the positive. Like we can get 100 positive comments, but I saw the couple of negative things that popped up in the questions, and it got me right here, right? And so it's that idea of we need to acknowledge when we have these negative thoughts creep in, whether it's internal thoughts or somebody else saying it to us, and then flip that around and find the positive and the strength in ourselves to say, I will not limit my greatness to make anybody else feel comfortable. And I shouldn't have to suppress myself and the full expression of who I am because other people feel uncomfortable or insecure in their own self to have me around. And I think it's taken a long time to come to that, and that's a daily practice. That is an hourly practice. That is a minute by minute practice to acknowledge these negative thoughts, to let them pass through, to replace them with a more positive message and representation, and to know that we are not totally defined by our outcomes or our athletic successes or our race results or our mile times. You know, we are defined by so much more as people. And so it's important for us to recognize like the fullness of who we are and to not limit the greatness of ourselves to make other people feel more comfortable.
I mean, we can just stop the panel now, Chris.
Hey, literally.
Oh, so
We're not going to. We're not
So
going to. We have a ton of great questions actually coming into the Q&A. So definitely, if you're out there watching, you know, keep those coming. There's actually a few that kind of build right off of that, Chris. And so, Jessamine, just quickly, you know, one of the questions is around, okay, so yeah, there's the self-talk, but then what about the other people who are talking, right? Like the haters, the negative posts and comments, the trolls, like how do you actually compartmentalize that? I know you all probably experience this as being, you know, public figures, but like we all experience it. I'm sure Isabel has experienced this on social media. You know, I have experienced this on social media. Like, what do we do with that? How do you actually move forward and not let that hold you back?
I mean, I don't want to make it sound like I have this all the way figured out. So like I'm going to say some stuff, but I don't want to make it seem smaller than it is, because literally today I saw a comment that someone had written about me and I was like, who does that person think they are talking to? They don't know me. Like I know what it is to feel like you want to pop off and or like be very deeply offended by an opinion of a stranger. But one thing that I always try to remember is that people who are happy do not reflect negativity on others. So if someone is reflecting negativity, it's because they feel really upset and sad in their own lives. So when I see trolling and commenting, generally, my feeling is like something terrible is happening in that person's life. And like, it might not be something that they are talking to other people about. It might be that like, you know, someone in their family is really sick and they have to take care of them, and maybe they feel like really belittled in that situation, or maybe they have really low self-confidence, and or maybe somebody said something awful to them at work, and like now they get on the internet and they just want to find a way to feel good. So the only reason that people troll is because they are miserable themselves. And there was a time where like I just used to feel like it was really sad and pathetic. And now I've gotten to a place where I'm like, I can't deny that the reason that I can acknowledge that in another person is because I see it in myself. I know what it is to experience that sadness. And so all I can do is reflect compassion to other people. And again, there are times where people try me and I'm like, okay, you don't know me. I wish you would come by my house and say that to my face, but they never would, because the internet especially is a place where people feel free to just say whatever they want. And that's the beautiful thing about it. And so there's pros from that and there's also cons. And yeah, I think it's just really helpful to remember that like any trolling is just coming from a sad place. And if you put that negative energy back toward that negative energy, it's just going to sprout and turn into something that you don't need to be a part of. So I feel like just recognizing that that's what it is. And I'm not into blocking or deleting. And I mean, maybe one day I will be, so I'm reserving the right to change my opinion. But up to this point, I'm not into that. I feel like if you want to say something, you say it, and I don't have to acknowledge it. And that if I feel like acknowledging it, I can. I'm deeply inspired by people like Brianna, who will go off on people who troll her. Like, she's like, you know what, actually, some days I have time for that. And I feel like if that's what your spirit calls you to do, then that's what your spirit calls you to do. But it helps to remember that usually people are just sad and they just want to find some way to feel happiness. And, you know, that doesn't mean that you need to be their punching bag, but it does mean that you can remember that.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take that with me too. I think we can all take from that. Chris or Alexa or Isabel, anyone of you want to chime in on that as well?
Would you go, Chris?
Go ahead, Isabel.
Taking from what Jess said was, my mom told me that at a very young age, where a lot of bullies tend to be bullied themselves, and that's how they're reflecting it. And so thankfully, before Instagram was like big and stuff like that, my mom has always been telling me that. And for me, I'm the type of person where my mom has built my self-confidence since I was young. So people's opinions don't bother me that much, and I don't usually look for other people's opinions. So every time, like when high school started, and I was down with myself because I was like, this is not what I want to do anymore. And when I finally made like the decision to be like, okay, this is what I want to do, not because everybody else wanted me to do that, I felt so much power in that, finally having like control of my own life. And I got to experience that at a young age. While some people are probably gonna experience that after college or in the 30s and stuff like that. Like my sister, she's the opposite of me. So she does care what people have opinions about her. And sometimes I'm like, well, sometimes if you do something for your own self, that opinion is nothing, because you'll find that own success and that love for your own, like yourself, above everybody else's, and that feels amazing. And recently she just took a big step for her own self-confidence. So that's what I have to say for the other youths out there, that once you make a decision for yourself, it becomes a lot easier to blow off the people that are don't want to see you succeed.
Such good advice. Plus, we all need your mama, it sounds like, for some sisters. But really wise advice, Isabel. And I'm glad that you are learning that now. I know that's been more of a recent development for me as I've been in my 30s. We'll go with that. Chris, I know you were going to jump in here too.
Yeah, someone once told me that other people's opinions of me are none of my business, and I really took that to heart. And I think that was a game. It was a game changer for me because, like I said, I grew up and I, even as a young adult, spent so much time worrying about what other people thought of me, and being able to release that and let that go. And I'll be honest, I certainly have not released it fully, and I am definitely prone to posting a shirtless selfie when I feel like I need some likes. And, I definitely catch myself in these moments of wanting validation from external sources. But when I realized that I can't control what you think about me or what you say about me, I can only control how I react to that. And as I started to process that, I started thinking about, what do I want my legacy to be in this world and on this earth? And I try to respond to every troll and every comment. If I'm going to respond, like Jessamine said, I don't have to, and I reserve the right to not. But I try to respond with kindness and respect and love, and just know that that person is probably hurting. They might be the victim of comments like this themselves, and that's just their pattern of communicating. And when I approach them with with compassion and with love and kindness, I often get people to turn around. The trolls will apologize for their actions, or will back off. And I've also been able to, in my responding in that way, cultivate a community of like-minded people around me, where if a troll hits my page, I don't even have to respond, because I'll have 10 people swoop in and say something before I even see it. And I think that's a really incredible thing too, is that there are good people out there. There are people who treat people with kindness and love and respect. And, I want that to be my legacy. And so I try to remember that when I'm responding to people who are being hateful or hurtful towards me, is that it's probably just a lack of understanding, and that something's going on with them, and I can't control them. I can only control how I show up in this world. And I have a very specific vision of what I want that to be. I want to uplift people in my community. I want to be a positive representation and a role model for other people. And I really just try to live out those values that are important to me.
Yes.
Yes. So Alexa, I'm sure that this relates to you. I know you have so many fans, and the WWE community is large, and I'm sure, you know, part of the entertainment of the WWE story is like you're fighting against people and your characters are against each other. So I'm sure you have the character piece on top of that. But I wanted to kind of actually take this a little bit further because I know you have a lot of fans, and there are young girls out there who are watching you, who are watching WWE, who are looking to you as a role model, really idolizing you as an athlete, as a champion. You know, who were some of the folks, and Alex, I'd like for you to start, but I'd love to go to the group. Like, who are some of the people that you all really look up to in the sports world, and you looked up to when you were younger, and still look up to today, including yourselves, of course.
First of all, thanks. Second, in sports, I don't know, like when I was in sports, I always thought I was going to go to the Olympics. I always looked up to Shannon Miller. I always thought, you know, I was going to be the next Shannon Miller. And, but as a person, I always looked up to my mom. She was my main role model because she, you know, she had me young and she was the one that got me involved in sports. And she's kind of been the person that was there through me for all my ups and downs. And, you know, she's taught me a lot of life lessons. Like, you're not gonna appease everyone. Like everyone's somewhere, something is gonna say something, and someone's gonna be mad about this, someone's gonna be mad about that. Especially, you know, like you said with WWE portraying a character. I mean, for 7 years I was a bad guy. So imagine like getting trolled, but on like a whole nother level because my character was cheating to win matches and was saying horrible things about people, but it was all in like the storyline. But that's the thing, like you have to separate yourself from it. And, you know, when it came into wrestling, I really looked up to my coach, Sarah Amato, because she sat me down and she told me, you know, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and you're going to deal with a lot of crap and you're going to get through it. But she said, you just have to, you know, learn the process, love the process, and respect the process. And I think that goes with any kind of athletics, that you have to, you know, understand what comes with it, but you also have to love it for the good and the bad and the ugly. And, you know, mostly I looked up to my mom, but yeah, I'd say in wrestling, it was definitely my coach, Sarah Amato.
Awesome. Isabel, any people that you really are looking up to these days? Couldn't be sports or not, but just some good role models.
The women's national team, the soccer, they're amazing. I just finished watching the She Believes Cup, and then I think it was their last match that they turned their shirts inside out to show how much they won, but not the symbol. That was amazing. With they are amazing women, how they build themselves up, and so when I saw them do that, and then like not even before the game was over, it was all over like social media and stuff like that, and I was like, wow, last year they went up and they pointed out like, hey, this is an issue, and then they used voices, and not even, they used like symbols to show that they're serious about it. And by the end of the week, the guy stepped down, and I was a female now in charge. So that was, for me, that was amazing. Everyday life, I would say my mom, because my mom was a single mom taking care of 3 kids, and she always prioritized us and never gave up. And she made a lot of sacrifices from like moving from Puerto Rico to Florida. That was a big sacrifice for her, and she still managed to get herself through school, get us up and ready for school. So my mom is like a real Wonder Woman that I see all the time. So
yeah, thank you, Isabel. Jessamine and Chris, just real quick, any kind of people that you really looked up to when you were young that helped you in your journey of becoming who you are?
I'll go. Sure. I think that probably Serena Williams is my biggest inspiration in the sense that she has had to overcome so many. Serena and Venus, but Serena's body is so different from how people typically expect to see a tennis player. And like now she's like a top, but before she dealt with a lot of criticism. I mean, still continues to deal with a lot of criticism, but she's had to rise above by really just leaning into herself and really just like becoming the best that she can be. And that's really deeply inspirational for me, like just as someone who enjoys movement. And within the yoga world, like even within like Black yoga practitioners, I'm very, very curvy by comparison. And I think it's very easy to start to feel like things that are not like things that are normalized for smaller body practitioners are really like not okay for me to do. So like if I'm in a forward bend, my butt looks really big. If my breasts are like becoming exposed or something, these are things that the world really, I think, wants for me to feel self-conscious. But looking at people like Serena is really helpful for me because I'm like, it doesn't really matter what other people expect to see. This is who I am. And I'm also really inspired. I have this poster on my wall of the, speaking of the Olympics, of the Black Power salute that John Carlos and Tom 8 Olympics, I think. And I'm having a moment of like, I'm frequently doing or things that are offensive to someone, and regardless of whether or not it's offensive to them, like I just need to remember that I need to stand in my truth. I need to stand in my power.
I think we might have a little bit of a connection issue with Jessamine. Chris, do you want to just jump in and hopefully Jessamine will come back to us?
Yeah, I was going to say, I was 10 years old when I ripped out a poster of Tommy Smith and John Carlos making the Black Power salute and had that on my wall all the way through to today. So that was an impactful moment for me as a young person and for much the same reason. But I was going to say Serena Williams is certainly somebody that I look to, and also the U.S. women's national team. The WNBA players who just recently argued for their own, right to better pay and better, not equal, but better contracts for them. And I think all of that is super inspiring. And then also Caster Semenya. Caster Semenya is a South African runner who has been, the subject of a lot of debate because she is an exceptional athlete. She is a cisgender woman and she's a more masculine appearing Black woman. And so, the intersection of how people are policing Black and brown women's bodies in sport has always been an issue, but has never been more probably, at the forefront than with Caster Semenya right now. And, I just think that she has such incredible poise and grace in the way that she, and confidence in the way that she navigates the world, and just such a strong sense of self. And she's like the coolest person I've ever met in my life when I actually did get to meet her. So, I really just admire the way that she stands up and is just so comfortable in her own skin and confident with herself and her ability that she can withstand sort of, the sexism within sport, the racism that's thrown at her, the homophobia and transphobia that she's the victim of in terms of perceived transphobia. And, she just is at the epicenter of so many of these isms and discrimination, which, is all intersectional. Like when I'm dealing with transphobia in sport, it is largely because of the sexism that exists in the world and the way that people view women and female athletes. And so I think that's why this is become such a topic that I'm so passionate about in terms of gender equality in sports.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, that is definitely all the things coming together. We have a few minutes left of our panel, and there are a lot of questions that we didn't get to. People are really loving this conversation, so thank you all. I was hoping maybe we could kind of round out with a little bit like tips and advice. There seems to be some really tangible questions coming through. So I'm hoping we can maybe go around to everybody for like a final word, but really just thinking about really tactical tips, whether that's how to get out of a negative place, how to get to a place of mental happiness and health and positivity when you're in that moment, or something that you use as a mantra when maybe you're feeling a little bit insecure, advice that you've been given that you go to, in those moments. Chris, I think the sort of what other people think of you as none of your business is a great example of that. So in thinking of our Girl Up audience, I'd love to just go around and ask for a real tip or piece of advice from each of you. You've shared so much with us already. Alexa, I'll come to you first.
Mine's actually pretty straightforward. I just kind of think, you can, because there's a lot of situations where we beat ourselves up and we mentally get to this place where we feel like we can't go on and we feel like we can't accomplish something, or we can't get out of bed, or we can't possibly get everything done in a day. But my whole thing is you can, and that's why I have it right here on my wrist, the little white ink tattoo I have, you can. So I know that whenever I feel I get in that moment, I just look down and it says you can, and then just one of those things. It's so simple and just so little, but it actually means a lot to me, because I remember even growing up, I'd be like, well, I can't do this, I can't do that. My mom would be like, you can. And so that's kind of where it started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Jessamine.
I was going to say something else, but then I was like, if everyone else has their words tattooed on them, it's like, forget it. I have planted on my body. What I say first is ultimately, every time that I'm being really hard on myself, I can hear myself saying like, it's okay. Little thing that I didn't even really notice I was doing until I started recording my piano practice. But I noticed that I'm like constantly pepping myself up and just being like, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. So that's my thing, is just reminding myself that it's okay. But also tatted up in my upper arm, it says, throw away yesterday, today is a brand new day. And I'm always trying to remind myself that like, it's okay, whatever happened, what's past is past. All you can do is walk forward. It's a brand new day.
I love that. It's funny, I have my notebook, right? And I put a quote on the front of my notebook, and when I fill up a new notebook, then I get a new one and I pick out a different quote. And my last notebook was, she believed she could, so she did. So Alexa, I'm right with you on the she can. And Jessamine, my current notebook is, today is a new day. So like we are all in sync here. And like, those are the things that I look at every day when I go to my to-do list. Today is a new day. So Chris, what is your kind of advice or tips as we wrap up?
Yeah, I think one thing, in my transition, that when I transitioned to male and was thinking about the person that I am and how I wanted to show up in the world, I really had the opportunity to create this version of masculinity and of myself as a man in the world. And what I've learned through that version, through that experience, was that there were these expectations on me of being a man, and what does a man look like, and what should I do to have people acknowledge me as a man. And I internalized a lot of that, and I showed up in the world as a sort of stereotyping caricature for a little while, until I figured out what sat well with me. And in that, I think, what I learned is that there's not just one way to be a man, there's not just one way to be a woman, and there's not just one way to be a trans person or to be non-binary, that every one of us has our own unique expression and gifts and, way that we will show up in this world. And it's important to acknowledge that that is awesome, and that we need to break away from the expectations, not just within the gender binary, but also the expectations that people have in terms of gender roles and gender performance and gender expression and how we dress and what we like and the sports that we play and on and on. And so, I think just acknowledging that that our bodies can do incredible things, that we are capable of more than we think, and that we shouldn't be boxed in by the expectations of limitations just because you are a girl, or just because you are a boy, or because you are trans or non-binary, that we have within us. Like I said, don't limit your own greatness, to make other people feel more comfortable.
Thanks, Chris. Isabel, what is your advice for your fellow young leaders watching today?
One thing that I learned is that it's okay to choose you, to choose to love yourself. And I feel like a lot of people have that, where they'll do something amazing and they wouldn't want to tell somebody because they feel like, oh, you're just focused on yourself. But it's okay to praise yourself and to choose to love yourself, because it's your life, and it shouldn't matter if who likes you or who doesn't. But at the end of the day, nobody will love you as much as you will love your own self.
Yes.
Thank you. That is such a beautiful way to kind of wrap the conversation. I'm very touched by that, Isabel. I wish that at 17 I would have had that wisdom myself. So kudos and thank you for sharing that. So before we wrap up, I wanted to just kind of let everyone know we have an incredible way that you can be physically active, you can get your body moving, you can help gender equality, and help Girl Up. We have just launched our 5th annual Global 5K. And this year, our 5K is virtual. It is a fundraising event. We're raising money for girls' health and safety. And the funds raised will support our Girl Up leaders, which we need more female leaders now more than ever, I believe. But also the funds will go to helping girls and their health and their safety. But we want you all to participate. So we want you to sign up. You can complete this 5K in a lot of different ways. We've figured out how many steps it is. You can go up and down your steps at home. You can do a dance class. You can go for a bike ride. You can run. Like I'm sure Isabel probably will get her 3.1 miles in. But we'd love for you all to join us. Start a team, register yourself. If you don't feel like doing the 5K equivalent, we hope you will donate. And you can learn more about our Global 5K at girlup.org/support/Global 5K. The day that we're all going to kind of try to do this together is May 16th, so just about a month out. And we hope that you'll join us in some physical solidarity for gender equality while we're all trying to get out and keep moving, while we're all feeling probably a little bit crazy in our social distancing wherever we are. So I just want to thank each of you so much, Chris, Jessamine, Alexa, Isabel. This has been an incredibly inspiring conversation. I know I got some great advice from this, and I hope that our Girl Up community did as well. And you're all welcome back anytime you want to come share the love and share the advice. And thank you for spending the afternoon with us. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you for our next conversation. Thanks.
Thank you.